Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Also live on our FTN Network YouTube page, iTunes, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to your favorite podcast. This may not be your favorite one, but thanks for taking the time to hang out on this Friday. Chris Meaney here with you as we head into the weekend. We have Game 4 of the NBA Finals happening in Miami. It's got to be a must-win situation, even though they're only down 2-1. Has to be. We'll talk about the series in the next block. We're going to give some picks and some props. No spoiler right off the top. I like the Nuggets. I like the Nuggets in Game 3. I like the Nuggets here in Game 4. And I'm starting to see some line movement, 3, 3.5, 4 in some spots right now. And you see Miami home dogs here at plus 140, a total of 211. We'll get into it in the next block. We're going to recap last night's action in the NHL. You want to talk about a must-win situation. Last night, the Florida Panthers were in a must-win situation at home, down a goal with just over a couple minutes left. And Matthew Tkachuk, another big goal for Matthew Tkachuk. He left parts of the game. He suffered a big hit. Paul Maurice said that there was a concussion spotter. He missed, I don't know, I think he played like 3 minutes in the first period, wasn't on the bench to start the second period. He came back a few minutes into the second and scored a big goal, and the Florida Panthers went on to win the game in overtime. So, as the old saying goes, you're not out of it until you lose a game at home. And the Florida Panthers are very much alive in the series. If they can just stay out of the penalty box, we may get 6 or 7 games in this series. Completely undisciplined again from Florida. I know the refs last night, the reffing was as worst that I've ever seen. Not just in the Stanley Cup Finals here this year, but in the playoffs. It was pathetic. Like, there were just some soft calls last night all over the place. Like Chandler Stevenson, a penalty with 10 seconds left in the 2-2 game in the Stanley Cup Finals. He basically jumped over a dude, got his foot caught with another player's foot, and it was a penalty call. Like, that was super soft. I thought the Barkov cross-check in front of the net was very soft as well. Nonetheless, Florida finds a way to get it done. And like I said, Tkachuk has just been an absolute baller throughout the entire playoffs. And a shout out to Jonathan Marchessault. Still feel pretty good with this 31-1 Stanley Cup or Conn Smythe future for Jonathan Marchessault to lead the series in goals, which he is currently at plus 700, to lead the series in points, which he is currently at plus 1,300 as well, 13-1. So we are feeling pretty good about Marchessault, but we also need, now that Florida's back in the series, we need Vegas to come up big tomorrow. So we'll dive into it a little bit later on block 3, just kind of go over a little bit of last night and, maybe a couple thoughts on tomorrow's Game 4, because of course we won't have the show here at Mean Streets with you. Speaking of hockey, saw this come down from Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet. Damon Severson in New Jersey working on a sign and trade to Columbus, 8 years, 6.25. So the trade is complete. The signing complete, as you see there. And the other way, Friedman says the Blue Jackets trading a third-round pick in New Jersey. So you don't really see a lot of sign and trades for unrestricted free agents. He was going to be a UFA in about 3 or 4 weeks here, July 1st. You see sign and trades when it comes to RFAs, restricted free agents. Like, for example, Pierre-Luc Dubois is looking for a trade. He's an RFA. He doesn't want to sign an extension with the Winnipeg Jets. Does he sign one? Is there a sign and trade kind of there? Of course, like, teams that are knocking on the door and calling for Pierre-Luc Dubois, they're not going to trade him when there's no, talks about a contract extension. They're just going to give up a lot of pieces just for his rights. So there has to be something there. We saw Matthew Tkachuk last year get traded as an RFA. UFA, Johnny Gaudreau last year left. There was no sign and trade there, but this is a little rare. I like Severson. I think he's a pretty good defenseman. I think he's underrated. He's got a good first pass. He's got a little bit of an offensive upside to him as well. I think he's just an all-around really good defenseman. He's 28, 29. So, at the end of this 8 years, $6.25 million deal, he's going to be like 36. But the Blue Jackets are showing us that they're completely all in. Whether it's the right moves that they're making, that remains to be seen. The defense has improved, adding Ivan Provorov a few days ago, is a left side defenseman. Zach Werenski's really good. So they got 2 decent, left side defensemen. Severson on the right side. I don't know if he's a top pair, but he's certainly a top 4 defenseman on a team. And, they got some prospects in the works as well. So I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when I gave the NHL mock draft and the team inside, picking inside the 10 out of all those teams. I think the Blue Jackets were that team, for me personally, that I felt could turn it around the quickest because of some of the assets they have. Some young assets up front. Kent Johnson is one of those guys that comes to mind. And then Mirchenko, like they have a lot of really nice young pieces, a good foundation. Plus they do like Johnny Hockey and Patrick Laine and Boone Jenner. They have some upside players as well. And Babcock is now the head coach there in Columbus. Haven't seen him in quite some time. How's that all going to work out? Blue Jackets are making some noise, but they're giving up some picks and some prospects and assets for average defensemen. Again, just average defensemen. I think that they're an improved team. I think the Metro there's like a change of guard in the Metro. Right? This is the first time in a long time we hadn't seen Crosby or Ovechkin in the postseason in the playoffs. Like that's different, right? Washington, Pittsburgh getting a little bit older. The Atlantic is loaded with young teams like Ottawa and Buffalo and Detroit that didn't make the playoffs, that made a leap this year and will make a bigger leap next year as well. But I don't know. If you're a Blue Jackets fan, you do have to be a little bit excited. Always get excited when teams are being aggressive and making some offseason moves, but some questionable ones there, I think. But there's no question the defense is a little bit better. Speaking of moves, we mentioned yesterday when we did the best ball draft over at FTN Network, and you saw it hopefully on Game Plus Network. We talked about Dalvin Cook, and Alexander Mattison reports suggest that Dalvin Cook will be released from the Minnesota Vikings here. What does that mean for Alexander Mattison? Well, using some of our tools over at ftndaily.com, splits tool here, you will see that Alexander Mattison had some pretty decent games when Dalvin Cook was sidelined. Now, Dalvin Cook, I think he's a fantastic back. I understand Minnesota going this route. They have a new regime in place, analytical driven, don't want to spend $9-10 million on a running back. Dalvin Cook is going to land somewhere and he's going to help out a team. But what does it mean for Alexander Mattison? Now, you see what this table shows you. You got 56 games here where these two played together. And you have 6 games where Alexander Mattison had that backfield to himself. This is from, 62 total games. This dates back to, I believe, 2019. Now, Dalvin Cook was a full go basically all year last year. So some of the games here in particular, when you look at, for me, a game log from 2021, there were 3 games where Mattison really balled out. But this chart here shows, for example, rushing attempts. When Cook is on the field, he's getting 5.23 per game. When Cook is not on the field, he's getting 19.5. So he's getting 14 more. Rushing yards, he's getting 57 more per average. Not much of a bump in terms of touchdowns, but, 1 touchdown every 2 games. Targets goes from 1 to 4.5. You see all the green. It's obviously all positive here. Receiving yards, 5 per game, 36 per game. Catches, almost 4 per game, under 1 per game when Dalvin Cook is there. Full point PPR setting, 15 more fantasy points per game, 18 more and a half point setting. Old school standard newspaper drafters, 16.38 fantasy points per game, just 3.68 when he has to split the backfield with Dalvin Cook. The touches, right? 6 per game, 23 per game. Opportunities, that's carries plus targets. So a massive boost. You take that with a grain of salt. I think it's nice to show just what it's all about. I went back and I looked at some games, and I remember ranking Alexander Mattison as like a borderline RB1 when there's no Dalvin Cook, but can he do this over a full course of a season? How involved will Ty Chandler be as a back that they drafted a couple years ago? McBride is a back that they drafted this past year. How involved will those guys be? I think Madison's going to be the lead. I don't think that they're going to sign a veteran. I think that they kind of saw this coming. It's kind of writing on the wall for a little bit. Their Twitter banner about a month ago, they took Cook off. They put Mattison on. They extended Mattison to a 2-year contract. Mattison, you got to go back to 2021, the season where he did have a couple games where he filled in for Dalvin Cook. The 134 carries in one season is the most he's ever had. He's never topped 500 yards. This past year, he had 5 rushing touchdowns, which is the most he's ever had. He does have a season with 39 targets and 32 grabs. Again, that's the 2021 season. These 3 games that I'm going to share with you, the opponents weren't good at the time, but still, opportunity is king in fantasy, whether you believe he's a good back or not. Against Seattle, 26 for a $112, 6 catches on 8 targets. That's a fantastic showing. That's over 30 touches. Against Detroit, 25 for a $113, 7 targets, 7 grabs. Again, over 30 touches. Against Detroit, another matchup against the Lions, who were brutal in 2021 stopping the run, but 22 carries, 90 yards, caught 3 of his targets for 34 yards. Again, over 25 opportunities for him in that scenario. So yesterday, when we did the draft, if you missed it, going long here on the opening block, but yesterday, if you missed the draft, Dalvin Cook went 4th pick in the 6th round. So 64th. No, he had his ADP of average was 76. So he went 64th. So that's an uptick. I think he's even going to go higher than that. I think he's going to creep into like the 4th round. And then that was Alexander Mattison, as RB17. And then Dalvin Cook went as RB22, pick 74. So they kind of like just jumped each other a little bit, but that's just early. Like, I did that draft a couple hours after the news broke. So I think if we fast forward a month and there's no veteran back that Minnesota brings in, I really do believe that we're going to see Alexander Mattison kind of creep up into the RB15 range. It's getting a little steep, a little rich for me into that range. I did rankings this morning, kind of move some guys around. I do have him as RB18. I think that's fair as of now. And Dalvin Cook, we just don't know. I can't rank this guy, right, with any sort of confidence. If he goes to Miami, going to love him in Miami, right? And we'll see what they do with Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson. There's a lot of good scenarios good situations where Dalvin Cook could be. We'll see what happens. Whoever does get him, it's going to be a really nice get, and we'll break it all down when it does happen. We went super long. There's a job offer available over at FTN. We'll talk about it here in the next block. Oh, look at that. We'll just do it. FTN Data is hiring advanced football charters. You see right there a place where you could submit your resume to. That is Mike Tallis at FTNnetwork.com, TALAS, Mike Tallis at FTNnetwork.com. Send your resume in. And I talked to my guy, Frank Brank, a.k.a. Bank, about what the job was. And he said, watching NFL film and typing what you saw in spreadsheets. You're mostly watching post-game, but you are getting paid to watch football and chart some data for us. Seems fantastic to me. Mike Tallis at FTNnetwork.com. Tell him Chris Meaney sent you. We'll be back after the break. Keep her locked.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at SoRare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at SoRare.com/MLB.
Welcome back in. So going to do NBA in the next block. It's a quick little hockey block here because won't be here with you tomorrow. So I wanted to just give a couple notes, get ahead of some props that I do believe will change. I think Vegas is going to bounce back and win game 4. We were on Florida, myself and Eric Young over at Dangle Bet Selly. Excuse me. I actually both called an overtime game as well. It did end a little bit quicker than I thought it would. Carter Verhaeghe with the overtime winner. He's got 7 overtime winners already in his career. It's pretty spectacular. Not bad. Among some elite company, actually. But yeah, last night, Florida really undisciplined again with the penalties. I believe they're 0 for 11 on the power play, and Vegas has 6 power play goals. So that to me has been the difference. Sergei Bobrovsky bounced back. He looked like the Bobrovsky that we saw against the Leafs and against the Carolina Hurricanes. He made some really big time saves, and Florida was able to come back last night. And, again, it was a gritty performance because Matthew Tkachuk leaves for quite some time. He suffers the injury. I know I saw him moving the shoulder around, but it was a concussion spotter that, took him off the ice. I didn't know if he was going to come back. Sometimes you just don't know with these concussions, and your players want to come back, but, doctors not letting them to come back, things like that. Like Radko Gudas, we didn't see come back in game 2. He did return last night for game 3. Brennan Montour left for a little bit with a shoulder injury, and he was able to come back as well. But these are the shot attempt leaders. I've been showing this. This is just from last night, and 5-5 is always very important to me. And something I talked at length with Eric Young about was maybe some changes to Florida's lineup. And we saw that it took some time, but we finally saw Carter Verhaeghe, get involved in the game. And one thing I was stressing with Eric is I wanted to see him on that first power play, which we did at the end of the game. We saw Verhaeghe up on that first power play, and they took Sam Bennett off. But they took Verhaeghe off that first line with Barkov and Duclair, and they put him on the second line, which I just love the makeup of the second line when it's Bennett, Verhaeghe, and Matthew Tkachuk. I just feel like there's absolutely a little bit of everything on that line. You have the scoring touch that Carter Verhaeghe brings to the table, and the speed, because Bennett and Tkachuk are not that, they're not that fast. And Verhaeghe's got a lot of wheels. And then Bennett and Tkachuk, they do other things too. They're heavy on the forecheck. They finish checks. They win battles in the corners. Matthew Tkachuk is a great playmaker. Bennett is kind of like just goes hard to the net. So there's a little bit of everything involved with those guys. And last night we really saw it. So for Carter Verhaeghe, led the way on both teams with 6 shot attempts at 5-5. Just the 2 shots on net, but 4 scoring chances. Of course, he had the overtime winner there. Aaron Ekblad was very active, 5 attempts, just the 1 on net. Brennan Montour. Brennan Montour continues to just be an absolute baller throughout these entire playoffs. He hit the bar, and he was very aggressive. He scored a goal, opening goal for the Panthers. 5 attempts, 3 shots, 1 scoring chance. I would imagine that scoring chance was the one he put in the back of the net in the slot area. On the other side, William Carrier, he had some moments, didn't put any of those attempts on net. 4 attempts, 2 scoring chances, 0 shots. William Karlsson was all over it last night. 4 attempts, 3 shots. I thought Chandler Stevenson had a really good game last night as well. 3 attempts and the 3 shots and the 3 scoring chances as well. The one guy that I wanted to stress here a little bit more that you don't see is Sam Bennett. Now, when you look at the overall shot attempts, one guy that's not on this list, Sam Bennett, he did have 3 attempts last night. He was our free bet. He had the 4 shots. The 3 attempts were at 5-5, but overall, this guy had 12 shot attempts last night. Sam Bennett, 12 shot attempts. Brennan Montour had 9, Carter Verhaeghe 8, Matthew Tkachuk with 4. 12 shot attempts is, it's crazy. It's a lot. That's a lot of shot attempts. But again, this guy likes to shoot the puck. Matthew Tkachuk is a pass-first guy, and Sam Bennett is not. So now Sam Bennett here, I just wanted to, because I think this is going to change tomorrow. Last night we had over 3.5 shots plus 100, which we got. It was nice to get that. I saw this morning plus 100 again. Now I'm seeing minus 106. So this is going to change. Sam Bennett is a guy on the road that averaged 2.4 shots per game. At home this season, 3.5 shots per game. So flirting with 4 right at this number, going to continue to, just really put his head down and put pucks towards the goal. And I know it doesn't seem like there's any analysis there or hard analysis there, but this is a guy that we've just been riding for a couple of years at home. So Marchessault, shout out to him. Another goal. Nobody really on Vegas. We had Mark Stone. it was just an okay day yesterday. We had the Panthers in the money line. We had Sam Bennett. We had Mark Stone. We had the same game parlay, with Eichel and with Marchessault that just continues to hit. It's 3 for 3 here in the first 3 rounds. And for Marchessault, he's got a goal in each of the first 3 rounds in the Stanley Cup Finals. I mean, that's just the third player in the last 35 years to do that. We saw Jake Gentzkel with the Penguins a few years ago, and then Steve Yzerman with the Wings definitely a few years ago. I forget the year, but it had to have been like 15, 20 years ago. But Marchessault, what he's doing is fantastic. So I'm on Vegas and the bounce back. If Florida can stay out of the penalty box, this will be a lengthy series. Love their 5-5 game yesterday. Saw Vegas with like one shot in the first 15 minutes of 5-5 play. So if they can stay out of the box and Bob is going to keep them in games, then this series may go 6 or 7, but I'm not going to come off of what we had for the Vegas Golden Knights. Rambled enough about the game, but I think for me personally, I will go back to Mark Stone. Had the over 2.5 shots. I got to stay away from Barkov, even though the attempts are there. I got to stay away from him. Sam Bennett, Carter Hagee, Mark Stone, Jonathan Marchessault. So it's kind of where I'm going to live. And I still like Shea Theodore, even though the past couple games he hasn't hit. The ice time and the attempts are still there for Shea Theodore. And because Florida's taking so many penalties, we are getting opportunities and attempts from Marchessault and from Shea Theodore. And I just don't know Florida. That's just the style that they play. They're kind of in your face. I don't think they can help themselves. But man, this penalties are very silly. Very, very silly from them. Quick break. We'll be back here after the break. We're going to dive into the NBA. Game 4 tonight. Nuggets, 3.5-point favorites, 4-point favorites in some spots. We're going to talk about them and a couple props here to attack on the hard court. Back in a couple. Hang tight.
The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare. Build your teams just like an owner. Buy, sell, or trade officially licensed digital player cards. Build your 5-player weekly lineup, and you could win rewards like tickets, autographed jerseys, and more. The future of fantasy sports is here with So Rare, taking Dynasty to the next level.
Welcome back in game 4 tonight in Miami. Heat and the Denver Nuggets, 3.5-point favorites for Denver. I'm seeing some spots there, 4.5. So use the prop shop, parlay calculator, all that good stuff to get the best possible odds. And the total is 211 there as well. Miami home dogs, of course, plus 140 there on the money line. I like Denver. I like Denver in game 3. I like Denver heading into this series. I thought that Miami could get a game. They did get a game. They had some adjustments in game 2. I thought they played pretty good defense, but you just can't stop Jokic and Murray. These guys are unstoppable. They both had a triple-double in the same game, which was the first time that you've ever seen that. First teammates to both record triple doubles in the same finals. Only teammates to each record 30-point triple doubles in any game. Like, these guys are just they're unstoppable. We talked about the Jamal Murray assist prop earlier in the week when it was 6.5, and we wondered if it was a trap. Now it's 7.5 juiced. I kind of feel like he's going to get 8 times again. I mean, he's had at least 10 in each of the first 3 games here. Just the pick and roll between these two guys just seems to be unstoppable at the moment. And you know what the scariest thing is I don't feel like Denver's played their best game yet of the finals. I thought game 1 certainly had some moments. I thought mostly like the Heat kind of, weren't that great in game 1. Game 3 was the closest they've played to a complete game, Denver, that is, in the finals. They've been fantastic throughout the entire playoffs, right? They make quick work of the Lakers. They make quick work of the Suns. These guys have been just all systems go. The defense is a little bit suspect, but no surprise that it was Denver making the adjustments. In game 2, we saw 30, according to NBA.com, 30 wide open 3 attempts for Miami. They were just tight. They were all over it. But ultimately, it's Joker and Jamal Murray that I can't get off of. These two guys are just, they're unstoppable when it's the pick and roll. Like it's one of the, and I think it's crazy to even say it. That's why I'm pausing here for a second. It may be like the nastiest duo I've seen in quite some time. It does remind me of Shaq and Kobe back in the day. And Shaq and Kobe didn't have all those assists, right? Like those guys are distributing the ball, whether it's with each other and the pick and roll and some screens. But I am still waiting for other guys to kind of step up in Denver. We saw Aaron Gordon in game 1. I'm still waiting for Porter Jr. to kind of step up. I think that he's too good of a player to kind of be this cold. I think he could break out. I think we could see him with a couple trays here, but I'm going to Denver. I'm taking the over 3.5. It's already locked in for me. I think we'll see this number jump up to 4. Or it's already at 4 in some spots, but maybe 4.5, maybe close to 5 before tip off. But my favorite prop really is a Miami player, and it's Gabe Vincent. And it didn't work out for us well in game 3, but I still think that the process was right for Gabe Vincent. He was 1 for 6 from beyond the arc in game 2 game 2, he was 4 for 6. In game 1, he was 5 for 10. In the series, he's averaging 3.3 threes per game on 7.3 attempts. He's cleared 2.5 threes in 4 of his last 6 games. Overall, he's cleared in 10 of the 17 games here in the postseason, but the minutes are on point. Like he's living in that low 30-minute range. Most of the shots that he does jack are from beyond the arc. I would say game 2, definitely an outlier, 23 points, 8 for 12. Like he's not that great of a shooter, but if the guy's going to jack up 6 shots from beyond the arc, I think he's going to hit half of them. And that's kind of my mindset here for Gabe Vincent over 2.5 threes at plus 125. You want to take Denver on the spread at minus 3.5 at minus 105 over at DraftKings. And again, looking at Jamal Murray here, 25.5 points does seem slightly high for Jamal Murray. I would lean with the over there, but the assist prop is now changed considerably for Jamal Murray. It's now like we got 5.5 in game 1, 5.5 in game 2. Game 3 was 6.5, and game 4 here is 7.5, minus 130. There are books that are hanging 8.5 at plus money. FanDuel has over 7.5 at minus 146. I think I would lean honestly with the over 7.5 at BetMGM at minus 130. I just think that Jamal Murray is on one right now as well. And Quan, I mean, you should have joined me for this block. Malone keeping Murray on the floor for extended minutes in game 3, 39 in game 2, 45 in game 3. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I didn't think there was a lot of urgency in Denver. I thought they were feeling themselves a little bit too much in game 2. They were up in that game and they're kind of just like, oh, here we go. We're going to cruise. Everybody's feeling us. We're feeling ourselves. And Miami had a very strong fourth quarter. The urgency is always going to be there in Miami. Like Spoelstra's such a good coach. He's going to try to make some adjustments again. It's always like, it's like football when you hear halftime adjustments. It's always like when the team doesn't win, like it's that coach making some adjustments. But I just feel like Denver, that was the closest I saw them to like their complete game in the NBA Finals. And I think we're going to see a really strong performance from them as well. So I'm in on Denver on the spread. I have the lean to the over on Jamal Murray for the points and the assists at over 25.5 and 7.5 points assists. You can get Joker. You can get him for a triple double and Denver to win on the money line for plus 170. I saw that as well, but it's just, he's an absolute cheat code for a guy to get a triple double. It shouldn't be plus 100. That's what we've seen here throughout the playoffs for Jokic to get a triple double. Like that stuff is just bonkers. But yeah, best coach in the NBA, like current coach. I know you mean current. I know you don't mean of all time. He's a really good coach. He is a really good coach. I think we talked about some of the, his accomplishments after he punched a ticket to the NBA Finals. Like he's a guy that's has a lot of success, and pre-LeBron success and post-LeBron success as well, right? So he's definitely a really good head coach. No question about that. Current for sure. I knew you were going to talk about current. All right, we're going to stop with the NBA, the NHL for now. We got a lot of picks over at ftnbets.com, ftnbets.com/free. You want to check out the 3-day trial. We got a new look on our websites as well, thanks to George, of course, making it look so fancy over at FTN Bets, FTN Daily, FTNFantasy.com. A lot of picks in there. I see Benny Ricciardi's got a few NBA picks, some props. He's been great here throughout the postseason as well. He's up 21 units in the association, and he does himself a Jokic prop, but you'll have to go and check that one out for yourself. ftnbets.com/free. We're going to switch gears and talk a little football. I got some fantasy football busts. I got round one, how I think round one of your fantasy football drafts should go. And we do have some MLB picks and some props as well. So keep her locked. A little bit more to get to here on Game Plus Network.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
In that last block, I can kind of see myself choppy here, so I got a lot of windows open. Well, bear with me here. 25 shot attempts for Sam Bennett through 3 games. There isn't a Vegas player that has over 15. That's at all strength, Sam Bennett, and Brandon Montour is just behind him at 24. Sam Bennett, he's a puck hawk, and we love puck hawks for shot props. We're going to save the MLB picks and the MLB props for the final block here. We got NFL fantasy football bust in the next block. I did want to talk maybe the first round of drafts, and you guys have seen me do a couple best ball drafts, and I think you take that, I guess, a little bit of a grain of salt, because people are stacking and they're willing to take some risks, but I don't think there's really a bad pick in the first round. Maybe Bijan Robinson. This is how your first round of fantasy football drafts should go. Half point, PPR, whatever format you play, it doesn't really matter. Justin Jefferson should be the first pick off the board. He should be 101. If you didn't believe it last year, you better believe it now. The guy's been in the league for 3 years. He's just shy of 5,000 yards, 1,800 yards last year, 184 targets, 128 catches. Adam Thielen is gone. From a fantasy half-point setting, he was 17.9 as fantasy points, 14.4 as a rookie, 16.3 sophomore, 17.9 The fewest yards he's had in a season, 1,400, and that was his rookie campaign. Justin Jefferson, he is pick number one. Pick number two may surprise you, but it is Jamar Chase for me. And I do believe that these four wide receivers are in a tier in their own. If you want to go JJ, tier one, sure. Not going to fight you on that. Jamar Chase is not going to have the same sort of volume as Justin Jefferson or maybe Cooper Kupp or Tyreek Hill, but there's no debate on the rapport that he has with Joe Burrow. So Jamar Chase, wide receiver 2 for me. He's got 22 touchdowns in 2 years in the NFL. He played 12 games last season and he had 1,000 yards. He was on pace to top the 1,400 yards he had as a rookie, and he had 134 targets in those 12 games. He had 128 in his first season in the NFL. He's clearly Joe Burrow's guy. Cooper Kupp here for me, and I know there may be some uncertainty with people. Cooper Kupp's a little bit older. He missed half the season last year. Matthew Stafford missed half the season. He's also a little bit older. The Rams did address the offensive line. They didn't do a whole lot through the draft to bring in wide receivers that are going to compete with Cooper Kupp. And last year, from a fantasy football standpoint, half-point setting, Cooper Kupp, 18.2 fantasy points per game. That was ahead of Jamar Chase, but Justin Jefferson as well. He was just shy of 1,000 yards, and he played the 9 games. So Cooper Kupp, not going to have the same type of season that he did have a couple years ago, but still an elite wide receiver. And the defense has got some holes this year. The Rams are going to be playing from behind. Cooper Kupp is going to continue to eat. Tyreek Hill showed me last year that he is quarterback proof. Tyreek Hill last season, 1,700 yards, over 180 targets. This guy had a phenomenal season with Tua missing time. Like Tua, if you remember, missed time. We saw Teddy Bridgewater. We saw Skylar Thompson. Tyreek Hill proved to us that he can be an elite wide receiver without Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football. So I still feel pretty good about Tyreek Hill. You can fight me if you want, and Chris McCaffrey going a little bit earlier than him. If you want to go CMC pick 3, I'm not going to fight you on that. But Chris McCaffrey is pick number 5 for me. Showed us last year that he still has a lot to offer, and in the right setting, he could still be the best fantasy football player in the game. And Chris McCaffrey last year, when he was acquired by the San Francisco 49ers, we really saw him just take off. 13 touchdowns in 14 games. We even saw a little bit of Elijah Mitchell, sprinkled into the offense. But Kyle Shanahan, the way that he utilizes some of these running backs, the offensive line is strong in San Francisco as well. Chris McCaffrey can do it all. He's a walking 100 yards, total 100 yards. He's going to catch you 3 or 4 passes. He's going to get some goal line touches in there as well. So he's the first running back off the board, but not for pick 5 for me. Pick 6 is Austin Eckler, 107 grabs last year, 17 touchdowns. He's got 38 touchdowns over the last 2 years, which is the most among running backs. He's still not a guy that you would assume to get 20 carries per game, but doesn't need them. Doesn't need them. The Chargers haven't done anything to, bring in competition to steal touches from him. He's going to be a beast inside the red zone. He's going to continue to catch passes. He's going to continue to be a fantasy football stud. Now, if they bring in Dalvin Cook, Zeke, or Fournette, that will cut into Austin Eckler, but he's still a rock-solid first-round pick for me. Travis Kelce, first tight end off the board. I view him as a wide receiver 1, straight up. I think he's just – they don't have a wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. It's not Kadarius Toney. It may be on paper, but Travis Kelce is that wide receiver 1, even though he plays at the tight end position. Don't be discouraged to draft Travis Kelce near the end of the first. You're going to have an advantage on the rest of your team at the tight end position. He is in a tier by himself. Stephon Diggs, back into what I believe is tier 2 here for wide receiver. Stephon Diggs, wide receiver or pick number 8 here for the Buffalo Bills. We'll see what Buffalo does. DeAndre Hopkins is reportedly visiting New England and Tennessee. Do the Bills have enough money? Do they want somebody like DeAndre Hopkins opposite of Stephon Diggs? I'm sure they do, but I don't know if they can fit him in. As of now, Stephon Diggs is the alpha wide receiver on this squad, the clear-cut number 1 for Josh Allen, and a guy that is going to be among the top 5 at the position in terms of targets. And the past couple of years in Buffalo have been fantastic for him. 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. Last year, 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. And I'm not a big believer in Gabe Davis being a strong number 2 and taking away a ton of action for Stephon Diggs. The one thing I will say is that teams were covering Stephon Diggs in the second half of games, they were doubling him. And that's why I felt like they would either draft somebody or be involved, via trade or free agency. I like Dalton Kincaid. He's just a rookie. They got 2 tight ends on the squad, Dawson Knox there. I think we'll see, Kincaid, kind of play that slot role and find some soft coverage. And I believe the reports, he looks great in camp. It's guys aren't wearing pads, but I do believe the reports that, he's looked good. I think we'll see a change in personnel from the Bills this year, but Diggs is clearly the number one guy and a link to a really good quarterback and a top offense there. Other wide receivers, I think, belong in that tier as well. As we get past Diggs, A.J. Brown for the Eagles, pick 9, and CeeDee Lamb, pick 10 for me. As you can tell, I'm heavy wide receiver here. I like my wide receivers. I want an alpha wide receiver. I think there's a lot of value. I'm not completely zero RB. If I had pick 5 and I had pick 6 and CMC were there, Austin Eckler were there, I would draft those guys. But I want an alpha wide receiver. And we've talked at length on this show about the value at the running back position, undervalued guys as well. But ultimately here for these 2 guys, it's like pick your poison. I think you're really splitting hairs, A.J. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. I think CeeDee Lamb may be headed for more targets, but A.J. Brown didn't miss a beat. You would think the volume and the target share would drop moving from Tennessee to Philadelphia, but he was more efficient. The offense clearly much better. And there's certainly a rapport between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. So those are pick 8, pick 9, CeeDee Lamb, pick 10, Devontae Adams, pick 11. I am concerned about Jimmy G. There's a lot of question marks already. They brought in Jacoby Myers. This is a team that can't really match up with anybody else, inside their own division in the AFC. I think they have, great pieces on offense. It is going to be a run first team with Josh Jacobs here. I just don't really believe in Jimmy G. And that's kind of it. I think the volume will still be there. He showed us that he could have good games. There was a game or 2 without Derek Carr, and Derek Carr didn't play great football last year. What I will say about Devontae Adams is, 1, this is fantasy. He's still, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in football ahead of Justin Jefferson. I think he's the most talented. His hands are terrific. He's a great route runner. He's just a mismatch. You just can't stop him. He's just so good. What I will say is that this team will probably have to throw more than they want to. They can say that they're going to lean on Josh Jacobs all they want, but the secondary is atrocious. And the teams inside the AFC, inside their conference, the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Broncos are going to be better offensively. The Jets are improved. Miami is great. Buffalo is great. Cincinnati is great. There's just a lot of powerhouse teams inside the AFC where I think, the Raiders, almost called the Oakland, are going to play into a lot of shootouts this year. They're going to give up a lot of points. They're going to have to, throw the football. And Jimmy G is certainly a game manager. He's a capable quarterback. He's not awful. I just feel like his ceiling is tapped a little bit, and he's not even 100% right now. So I'm fine with him. I know Ratcliffe has him as a top 5 pick. I don't have him aggressively ranked clearly, but I think, near the end of the first round, if you still want to go that alpha wide receiver, and again, I wouldn't fight you if you wanted to just pass on him and go Amon-Ra St. Brown or get involved with the running backs. And you saw I had pick 12, Saquon Barkley for me. It's not Bijan Robinson. I still have Bijan as a top 5 back, more on him in a little bit. I think Bijan's I just can't spend a first round pick on him. Saquon Barkley is in a tier, I do believe, with Bijan, definitely with Jonathan Taylor. Nick Chubb is a guy I like, and Josh Jacobs. But I feel like, if you're picking at the end of the first, still would like to try to get an alpha wide receiver and then maybe get a bell cow running back. If you go wide receiver, I still think you can get good backs. Najee Harris could be, your RB1. You got value there with Rashad White and Isaiah Pacheco and Cam Akers. There's some value at the running back position. I think those guys make for strong RB2s if you wanted to go that route. But I would get into what is, for me, the second tier at the running back position. And it leads with Saquon Barkley here. A nice bounce back performance. Everybody talking about him being injury prone last season. Played a full year, over 1,000 yards on the ground, caught 50 passes. The Giants offense should be better this year, bringing in Darren Waller, Paris Campbell, drafting Jalen Hyatt. Like, it should be a better offense year 2 of Dabo with Daniel Jones, right? Dabo did great things with Daniel Jones. He had the best season of his career. Completion percentage was high. Didn't turn the football over, was sneaky on the ground, again, over 700 rushing yards. But you got to feel like year 1 was just kind of implementing the playbook, trying to figure out how to improve Daniel Jones's game. And now year 2 is more comfortable for Daniel Jones and Saquon. And like I said, having Darren Waller, who's a veteran tight end, some two tight end sets that they could run with Bellinger and having, I don't love their wide receiver room, but it is improved. If Wan'Dale Robinson can stay healthy, Hyatt can stretch the field. He's going to be boom or bust, but he can give you something. I'm a big believer in Daboll, and he drafted Wan'Dale Robinson last year and Jalen Hyatt this year, so I know he's got plans for both of those guys. So there are some pieces in place. This Giants offense should be a little bit better. Dalvin Cook officially released from the Minnesota Vikings. All right, we're going to keep the football talk going here. We'll take a look at busts. We still got some MLB picks and props. And if you're just joining the show, maybe we can revisit the Dalvin Cook situation if there's some time. So we'll be back in a couple. We'll take a look at some fantasy football busts. And yeah, we are going to hate on Bijan just a little bit. Might be a mistake. We'll be back in a couple. Welcome back in. Here are a few busts, some players that I don't feel like will return their current ADP, return value. I know Bijan Robinson's on here. Listen, I think Bijan Robinson is fantastic. I think he's in a really good situation. Besides the fact that the Falcons are not going to be a great offensive team. Like, you can't fool me and tell me that they're going to be a top 10 offensive team, top 15, maybe upside to be a top 15 offense. The offensive line is underrated. Arthur Smith, is a great play caller. He wants to run the football. He does a great job running the football. What they got out of Tyler Algier, right, Tyler Algier is a really good back as well. There's no comparing Bijan and Tyler Algier. But Tyler Algier had over 1,000 yards on like 200 attempts on the ground. So if you are a person that believes Bijan Robinson is going to get 300 carries and 350 touches, by all means, go ahead and draft him in the first round. But I just can't draft him over Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. I'm just not there. I just can't do it. And that's the thing for me. I just can't take him 7th overall, 11th overall. He hasn't touched the field yet. He's just a rookie running back. Who knows? Maybe Tyler Algier will be sprinkled in a little bit. And I can already hear you. Don't draft, Bijan Robinson as a top 10 player, not to give him, X amount of touches. You got to, you're going to use him and give him all the touches. I don't know. Maybe they keep him fresh. Maybe they don't run him in the ground right away. Maybe they do use a little bit of Tyler Algier. Maybe they do use a little bit of Cordell Patterson. Like, it's possible that does happen. But I just feel like, for me, drafting him 7th overall, 11th overall, RB2, RB3 overall at the position, you are just drafting him for his absolute peak performance. You were just drafting, if best case scenario. What I like is to find value at the running back position. I like to draft guys that I think will outdo their draft position, could be a little bit better than that. I just feel like you're taking him at the absolute best, and there is some risk there. I don't want to be viewed as a hater. I know, like, that's possible. I'll take it. Go ahead, give it to me. I'm rooting for Bijan Robinson. He should be the first pick in rookie drafts. He should be a top 10 running back this year. I don't be shocked, though, if he's like RB7, RB8. That's still a really good season, but you're passing on some really proven running backs. Derrick Henry's another guy. Like, is Derrick Henry completely done? What about Nick Chubb? Like, Nick Chubb has been an absolute staple in the NFL over the past few years. Nick Chubb, 1,500 yards, 300 carries. This is what you get every single year from Nick Chubb. Saquon Barkley. Like, this is another guy that's been pretty good over the course of his career. Now, I will say that there are a couple rookies that have had good performances and finishing close to where they are drafting. Saquon, Zeke, these are guys that certainly come to mind, but like Nick Chubb, we're going to pass on Nick Chubb, who's had 1,000 yards in every single year of his career. I mean, 996 as a rookie. You know, he started 9 games. But like, this is a guy that is just a walking 12 to 1,400 yards, 300 carries, maybe a little bit more usage through the air this season. So I've just pumped the brakes a little bit on Bijan. Love the scheme, like the offensive line. Do believe they're a run-first squad, but I just feel like you're drafting him in his absolute peak. Who are some other guys that are on that list? So yeah, a little bit too carried away. Travis Etienne. Love Travis Etienne as a running back, right? I really do. Like this, again, Jahmyr Gibbs, another rookie. I just feel like Gibbs, yeah, he's going to catch a bunch of passes, and, it's a good offensive line in Detroit. The offense is good. No Jameson Williams early. Like, Gibbs could play that Swift role, but if he does play that Swift role, and I do believe he's going to be a better back than Swift in the NFL, don't get me wrong there, but I just think David Montgomery is the undervalued back in Detroit. He's the back that I think will be the goal line back, play a similar role to Jamal Williams next year. Jahmyr Gibbs is going as like RB 12, 13 in some spots. That is just, again, too high for my liking. I think he's more of a low end RB2. Travis Etienne going as RB 12, 13, a little bit too high. Remember, the Jags did draft him in the first round a couple years ago before they brought in Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson has a history of rotating through backs, using a lot of backs. I think Etienne is going to be the lead. I think he's going to see some soft coverage, like some soft boxes. I think he's going to have good games where he totals 100 yards and he catches 3 or 4 passes. But I don't know if he's going to be the goal line back. I don't know if he's going to be the every first and second down back. They drafted Tank Bigsby, who's a big body back, his short yardage back, could be the goal line back. Trevor Lawrence, showed us that he can carry the rock inside the 5 and get some rushing touchdowns for you as well. He's a big body. And I think he's going to continue to be involved, inside the 5 and things like that. But for Doug Peterson, the history is there, using a bunch of different backs, being with the team and part of the draft process and drafting Tank Bigsby and seeing Travis Etienne. I don't know if he's like completely built that way. I don't know how durable he is. Didn't play at all in his first year, suffered injury last year when he was getting 20 plus touches. JaMychal Hasty was stealing some goal line carries, stealing some first and second down opportunities in short yardage situations. I think he's a good back. Again, like, if you have ETN and dynasty and things like that, like, don't be discouraged. I think he's in for a really good season, but I just feel like he's slightly early. As for the wide receivers, we'll touch on them quickly and then get out of here. Mike Evans is kind of obvious. Now, if he falls outside the top 35 at the wide receiver position, then he starts to become a value, but he's just, don't view him the same as you viewed him throughout the whole course of his career. I mean, you go back to 2014 as a rookie, the guy's had 1,000 yards in every single season, right? Touchdowns were down last year, 6 touchdowns. And he was just very boomer bust last year. I would read off some of his fantasy point games: 7 points, 26, 10, 6, 14, 6, 7, 4, 7, 6, 10, 4, 44. He finished the season with 44 fantasy points. That's why he finished where he did. He had over 200 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. You got to remember, no Tom Brady, right? We showed the video a couple weeks ago of Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. This team is going to be playing from behind. There will be targets. There will be a lot of pass attempts for whatever quarterback is under center as they try to play catch up when they are trailing in games, but there's going to be some inconsistency in those targets. He's going to probably be among the leaders in ADOT, maybe top 15, top 20 in average depth of target, but I don't know how many of those balls he's going to be able to catch. Calvin Ridley just going a little bit too early. It's been some time since we've seen him. Didn't play last year. He's a couple years removed from a really good season. Love him as a player. I think he's great. A fantastic fit for Jacksonville. Love this offense. Like, don't get me wrong. ETN, Ridley, Kirk, Ingram, Zay Jones, there's a lot of great pieces here. Trevor Lawrence in year 3, year 2 with Doug Peterson. The Jags are going to be a top offense in football. I really believe that. But Ridley shouldn't be going wide receiver 15, 16, and Kirk wide receiver 35, 36. These guys are going to be a lot closer to each other. Kirk is the value at the moment. And then Deebo Samuel, just again, if I look at fantasy points per game, rookie 10.7, sophomore 9.2, year 3 18.8, last year 10.8. Tell me where the outlier season is. It's year 3. It's 18.8, when he had 59 rushing attempts, 365 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, 14 total. Last year, 3 rushing touchdowns. He's still going to be used in the red zone. He's still going to get some bubble screens and, some carries out of the backfield, but those carries inside the red zone are going to go down now that Christian McCaffrey is a part of the squad. And we could see it happening towards the end of last season. Week 1, 8 attempts on the ground, 4, 5 attempts, and then 1, 2, 3, like towards the later part of the year. And when you have a beast like CMC, you don't really need to give the ball inside the 5 to Deebo Samuel. Great weapon, great player, but from a fantasy standpoint, probably not a rock solid wide receiver 2 this year. I got a couple MLB picks and props to round out Mean Streets. Keep it locked.
Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB. Play So Rare MLB, a free revolutionary fantasy game and marketplace that transforms fans into general managers. Build your team with ownable digital player cards. Collect, buy, sell, and trade to optimize your lineup. Compete against So Rare managers from around the world. Climb leaderboards and advance to elite competitions. Based on your player's performance on the field, win rewards like game tickets, merch, and much more. Draft your set of free cards now at sorare.com/MLB.
Picks here for you. Marcus Stroman over 4.5 strikeouts at -120. Now he's only striking out 7 batters per 9. He's not a big strikeout guy, but his last 2 outings, perfect. 9 scoreless against the Rays, where only allowed 1 hit and 8 strikeouts. In his last start against the Padres, scoreless. He gave up the run. It was unearned, and he struck out 6. Now 7 batters per 9, but this guy, Stroman, is going to get to 6 or 7 innings here today against the San Francisco Giants, who have the second highest strikeout rate in all of baseball. And Stroman has allowed 2 or fewer runs in 7 of his past 8 outings, a solid 2.39 ERA, keeps the ball on the ground. Stroman is very underrated. And as we showed last week, he's a top 12 starting pitcher in fantasy baseball. The Dodgers over 4.5 runs. The Rays over 4.5 runs is +100. They're the second best hitting team against lefties, and they're up against Andrew Heaney today. The Cubs, they're going to give him the run support. Marcus Stroman. Stroman's going to pick up the W. The Cubs are going to win. They get a matchup against Anthony Desclafani, and Desclafani has been an absolute gas can this season. 5 earned runs, 3, 4, 5. A high contact rate, struggling with walks as well. I think the Cubs are going to get to him. And it's Shohei Ohtani day, but we're going with the under 7.5 because Luis Castillo is on the bump for Seattle as well. So under 7.5 runs. Ohtani is going to rack up some strikeout against Seattle, who has one of the lowest averages in all of baseball. And Luis Castillo has had his way with the Halos over the past couple years as a member of the M's. I think the Halos win, but I like the under 7.5. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday. Cheers.